History remembers few names as powerfully as Adolf Hitler, not because of greatness in the way we usually admire it, but because his life is one of the clearest warnings of what happens when ambition, failure, and hatred collide. This is not just a story of a dictator. It is the journey of a boy who dreamed, who failed, who searched for meaning, and who, instead of rising above his struggles, allowed bitterness to twist his destiny. His story is heavy, but within it lies a lesson for every human being. Ambition is a fire, and how we direct it decides whether we build the future or burn it. Hitler's life began far from the battlefields and speeches that would one day define him. He was born on April 20, 1889, in the small Austrian border town of Braunau am Inn. His father, Alois, was a stern, controlling man, employed as a customs officer. Alois valued discipline, order, and authority, qualities he tried to force into his children. His mother, Clara, by contrast, was gentle, loving, and protective. Young Adolf adored her deeply, between his father's harshness and his mother's tenderness. His personality grew divided. On one side, defiance against authority, on the other, a craving for love and recognition. As a boy, Hitler was not exceptional. He was neither a brilliant student nor a complete failure. He did well in some subjects, poorly in others, especially anything that required structure and discipline. What he loved most were art and history. He sketched for hours, drawing houses, landscapes, and imagined worlds. Teachers noticed his talent for drawing, though his father dismissed art as worthless. Alois wanted his son to become a civil servant, a man of rules and stability. But Adolf dreamed of becoming a painter or an architect. Conflict with his father grew, and the boy began to rebel, not just against his father, but against authority itself. At 16, tragedy struck. His father died suddenly. Adolf was free from his father's control, yet he carried forward a resentment for authority that never left him. The boy who despised rules now wanted to shape his own destiny. A year later, death struck again. His mother, Clara, died from illness. Her loss devastated him. In her, he had found his only source of unconditional love. Now, he was adrift, clinging to his dream of art. At 18, Hitler moved to Vienna, determined to enroll in the Academy of Fine Arts. He presented his sketches, his passion burning. But the judges rejected him. They told him his drawings lacked human figures, that he had no real skill for painting people. For him, it was not just rejection, it was humiliation. He tried again the following year. Again, he was rejected. Imagine standing at the gates of your dream, knocking twice, only to be told you do not belong. Some use rejection as fuel. For Hitler, rejection became a scar that hardened him. Those years in Vienna shaped him more than any others. Homeless at times, living in hostels, selling postcards of his sketches, he drifted through the city. Vienna was a crossroads of cultures. Germans, Jews, Slavs, Czechs, Hungarians. To many, it was a city of diversity and opportunity. But to Hitler, struggling and bitter, it became proof of division. He read extremist pamphlets, soaked in propaganda, and began constructing a worldview built on blame. Instead of asking how he could improve himself, he asked who was at fault for his failures. In that dangerous question, his future path was born. When war erupted in 1914, Hitler's life took a dramatic turn. He enlisted in the German army and finally found a place where he belonged. In the trenches of World War I, he discovered discipline, comradeship, and purpose. He was wounded, decorated, and praised for bravery. For the first time, he felt he mattered. But in 1918, Germany lost the war. For Hitler, defeat was unthinkable. He could not accept it as a simple military failure. In his mind, someone must have betrayed the nation. This idea that Germany had been stabbed in the back would become the foundation of his political vision. Returning to civilian life after the war, Hitler found himself lost again. Germany was humiliated by the Treaty of Versailles. The economy was shattered, unemployment soared, and people were desperate for hope. And it was in this chaos that Hitler stumbled into politics. At first, he attended small gatherings of nationalists. Then, he discovered something that would change everything: the power of his own voice. Hitler was not a soldier anymore, not an artist, not a worker. But when he stood before a crowd and spoke, something happened. People listened. His words, delivered with passion, fire, and intensity, moved people. He had found his weapon, his art, oratory. Slowly his speeches grew louder, larger, more dangerous. He joined the German Workers' Party, which would later become the Nazi Party, and rose quickly to leadership. He discovered that anger can be contagious, that fear can unite, that hope, even false hope, can make men follow blindly. There is a lesson here. Every person has a gift. Some use their gifts to uplift humanity: leaders, teachers, thinkers, artists. But if a gift is poisoned by resentment, it becomes destructive. Hitler's gift was his voice. Used with compassion, it could have inspired healing. Instead, it became a weapon that manipulated millions. In 1923, he attempted to seize power in what became known as the Beer Hall Putsch. The coup failed, and he was arrested. For many, prison would have been the end of their story. But Hitler turned prison into an opportunity. He wrote Mein Kampf, laying out his ideology and vision. His words revealed not just his plans, but his obsessions: racial superiority, hatred, and conquest. The world did not take him seriously at first, but desperation has a way of turning dangerous men into leaders. Through the 1920s and early 1930s, Germany's crisis deepened. The Great Depression struck, unemployment rose, and chaos spread. People needed someone to blame, someone to follow. Hitler gave them both. By 1933, he became Chancellor of Germany. Soon after, he consolidated power, silenced opposition, and declared himself Führer. The failed artist of Vienna was now the ruler of a nation. At first, his rule seemed like a miracle. He revived the economy, built roads, created jobs, and restored national pride. For many Germans, life improved. They did not see, or chose not to see, the cost. Freedom was crushed, dissent silenced, minorities persecuted. Hatred was written into law. What looked like strength was really poison dressed in pride. In 1939, Hitler invaded Poland, and the world was plunged into the Second World War. His armies swept across Europe with shocking speed. France fell. Britain stood defiant. For a time, it seemed that Hitler might actually achieve his vision of domination. But ambition has a way of overreaching. In 1941, he invaded the Soviet Union, underestimating its strength. That single decision stretched his empire too far. Slowly, his victories turned into defeats. By 1943, the tide had turned. Stalingrad marked the beginning of the end. One by one, the nations he had conquered pushed back. The United States entered the war, joining Britain and the Soviets. Hitler, once seen as unstoppable, was now cornered. His vision of a 1,000-year Reich crumbled in just 12 years. In April 1945, with Berlin in ruins, Hitler retreated into his bunker. The man who once commanded millions was now surrounded by fear and despair. On April 30th, he ended his life, leaving behind a shattered nation, a broken world, and a legacy of destruction. But his death was not the end of his story. His story continues as a warning. What can we learn? First, rejection is not the end. Hitler faced rejection and turned it into resentment. But rejection can also be the beginning of greatness if we choose growth. Second, ambition is a double-edged sword. It can build bridges, cure diseases, and change the world for good. Or, if poisoned by hatred, it can destroy everything. Third, words are power. They can heal wounds or create them. They can unite or divide. Hitler's rise proves that when words are used irresponsibly, they can enslave hearts. Finally, leadership is responsibility. True leaders build, they do not destroy. They inspire hope, not fear. They unite, not divide. Hitler's failure was not just military, it was moral. He showed the world what happens when a leader loses his soul. So when we hear the name Adolf Hitler, let us not think only of the man. Let us think of the lesson. His story tells us that no matter how small our beginnings, no matter how many times we fail, what matters most is what we do with our ambition. Do we use it to heal, to create, to serve, or do we let pain turn it into bitterness, destroying ourselves and others? His story is a warning, but also a reminder. Our choices, every day, shape not just our destiny, but the destiny of the world around us. Greatness is not measured by how much we conquer, but by how much we uplift. And the greatest victory is not over others, but over ourselves.